I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord." Our feet were standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built as a city and is bound firmly together, to which the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to give thanks to the name of the Lord, as was decreed for Israel. Thrones for judgment were set there, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For the sake of my relatives and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Yea, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
It came to pass, when the days were near that he should be taken up, he intently set his face to go to Jerusalem and sent messengers before his face. They went and entered into a village of the Samaritans, so as to prepare for him. They didn't receive him, because he was traveling with his face set toward Jerusalem. When his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from the sky, and destroy them, just as Elijah did? But he turned and rebuked them, O you don't know of what kind of spirit you are. For the Son of Man didn't come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. They went to another village.
In April of 1865, Robert E. Lee rode to Appomattox Courthouse to meet with General Ulysses S. Grant on the terms of the surrender for the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. Lee, for the past 4 years, had led a rebellion against the United States in which hundreds of thousands of Americans had died. Lee knew of Grant's nickname, Unconditional Surrender Grant, and he expected very harsh terms. Lee knew what happened to armies that rebelled and failed, to those leaders that led the rebellion. More often than not, they were summarily executed. And this was on Lee's mind as he traveled to the courthouse to meet with General Grant. And as they arrived and began to talk about various things besides a surrender, Grant seemed very reluctant to start the negotiation, but instead talked about the old army where both of them had served before and the common friends that they had that were now on both sides of this conflict. Lee was the one that had to bring up, well, let's get on with the negotiations. And Grant, without saying a word, took out a sheet of paper and wrote out the terms of the surrender of the Confederate Army. And those who witnessed this said, obviously, Lee was shocked as he read the terms of surrender. It was nothing that he had imagined. They were very magnanimous terms, very gracious terms. When the Confederate soldiers turned in their weapons and signed a pledge saying they would not take up arms against the United States, they were free to go home, just to head back home. And the Confederate officers who should have been at least imprisoned by any other standards were allowed to go home with their sidearms. It was very gracious terms. There was no retribution in those terms that U.S. Grant presented to Lee. Grant was taking the advice of President Lincoln, who had told them to let them up easy. And Grant knew for true peace to occur, he had to be lenient with the former enemy and embrace them again as Americans. It was a pivotal moment in U.S. history. It feels like we're at a pivotal moment today in U.S. history. As I record this, it's just a couple days after the murder of Charlie Cook, a conservative American activist, a very polarized person. Yet the murder shocks the American conscience. And some people would say that this is just part of American history. We've had a violent past, and it just didn't start with the American Civil War or end with the American Civil War. Political leaders and presidents have been assassinated in American history. Our current president, President Trump, survived an assassination attempt. Violence in American politics is not uncommon, unfortunately. Yet we need to put an end to this violence. Second Amendment remedies are still a euphemism, by the way, for political assassination. It's still murder. They're still taking a life which God says is wrong in his 10 commandments. And we need to be more like Jesus Christ. We need to be more forgiving. We need to recognize people for who they are. We might not agree with what they're doing or their political stance. That's part of American discord, where exchanges of ideas are welcomed, but the violence must stop. Jesus is our example. The Samaritans and Jews were enemies in many respects. There was great animosity between the two people. They had different views upon God and where even to worship. And when Jesus was traveling through the region of the Samaritans, he found that the city gates were locked because he was heading to Jerusalem. And the Samaritans saw the city of Jerusalem as the city that oppressed them, the city that had conquered them and oppressed their religious views. And anyone traveling towards Jerusalem was blocked from entering Samaritan cities. And we hear of two of Jesus' disciples saying, "Lord, let's call down fire," as Elijah did. Elijah, the great prophet who had called down fire from heaven to consume the altars that he had built for God and the altar that had been built for Baal, to show God's power. They wanted to destroy the Samaritans, an enemy, a people that blasphemed against God, those who rejected the Son of God, Jesus Christ. Yet, Jesus tells them, no, we'll move on, giving those people another chance. Later on in the book of Acts, we hear of the Samaritans. We don't know if this particular village, but we hear in general that the Samaritans welcome the good news of Jesus. The people that had rejected him welcomed the idea of salvation offered by God. Jesus showed mercy to the Samaritans. Jesus showed mercy to the Romans. He healed their servants. Jesus offers forgiveness and salvation. We here in America must stop this violence. We must put an end to these assassinations, not just for the cause of America. America cannot survive with this violence, but because it's the right thing to do. It's what God is calling us to do. We must live by the example that Jesus Christ has shown us, to forgive our enemies, to turn the other cheek, to put an end to the eye for eye, tooth for tooth that seems to have gripped American politics. Embrace the forgiveness that Jesus is offering to you. See the forgiveness that Jesus offers to even his enemy. Follow Jesus, the Prince of Peace, and let us put an end to the conflict that we have here in these United States. Amen.